What I find most interesting about your career personally is when I look at your career, I think one of the things that stand out the most is that you shifted between different technologies, different companies a few times, and it always seems to happen at the right moment. So the thing that I would be interested in understanding is, how does that come naturally? Did you figure out, for yourself, this is the next step? How does that process actually go? Because it's an interesting thing, right? A lot of people are challenged with it. They may be looking into virtualization one day and, what is next? And I think you actually were spot on when it comes to that.
Lucky, I think, is the answer to that one, Duncan. I was luckily in the right place at the right time. I don't think there was ever a plan, right? So people often ask me this, and I get asked quite a lot about, doing, mentoring, what's my plan? I never really had a plan, but what I did throughout the career was so far is I've got involved in technology that I found really interesting, that I found, was exciting me, and I figured excited other people at the time, I suppose. And you get on those trends. I started out at Hewlett Packard in support, really internal support, working on some weird stuff, and then I always remember this. I had a problem, right? This is the weirdest story, and some of the older people in the world will remember this one. I was responsible for managing the IP address allocation at Hewlett Packard, right? So we had 15 dot internally, and I maintained essentially a spreadsheet in X Windows where we used to hand them out because DHCP wasn't a thing. It hadn't been invented, right? And then we had this Windows version came out with this thing called DHCP in it, and I was like, that's really interesting. That's going to basically destroy my job. And there's loads of things like that. I got involved in Wins and DNS and Bind and all these other bits of weird networking stuff and other things and pieces. And I think you just to have been around at those times. When now that people don't even think about DHCP, but to us back then it was a wizard thing to change that for an industry. So. And then what happened was I was another more dating. I was a trained OS2 administrator, administrating Lotus Notes at HP as well, which was another thing I can tell lots of stories about. And this new piece of software called Windows NT 3.1 came along, and we went, oh, that looks interesting. And because I'd spent a lot of my time working around the IP stack within Unix, I was like, hang on, I recognize all of this because someone's stolen it and put it into an operating system. And I got dragged across as the networking guy into NT at HP when we were the first people to roll NT out in the world outside of Microsoft. And so I suppose I was at the right place at the right time when sort of Windows NT was superseding arguably Unix and at the time as the thing to do. And I went into Unix because Unix was the thing. But again, right place, right time, I suppose, as being at the company that was deploying it first. And I then sort of followed through with NT. I picked up a bit of Novell along the way, just because you had to. And then when we were involved heavily with NT and I got various consulting jobs and I moved on from HP and worked elsewhere, I then got involved in this thing called Active Directory, or the first inklings of Active Directory, which actually was the underpinnings of Exchange 5.5. For those who remember, Exchange 5 then became what became AD, and sort of went on with that, and then realized there was a big piece missing with Active Directory and group policy. Didn't even exist. It was a thing we copied from Novell, and got involved in things around that, got involved at Microsoft, and then we realized that there was an opportunity around a few things, including a migration tool, because this will sound familiar to some people. What was happening is people were developing a whole new technology and expecting that customers would just somehow install this new technology and just move everything to it magically without having to worry about how it would work. And what they really needed was a migration tool that said, if you've got massive NT, we'll help you migrate to Active Directory seamlessly. And that was how I ended up at Quest Software. And, sort of the rest is history from there, really. And at Quest Software, I sort of moved from being in the field and being the person that was out doing these things and professional services and deploying them in reality. It's a funny story, but I was asked to go and demo some products somewhere, and I started making some jokes about, frankly, the rubbish I was seeing out there and the way things weren't working, and they resonated with the audience because they were all feeling the same pain as me. And I then realized I quite liked presenting, and it kind of, came from there. And so it's love of technology, a love of presenting, all sort of, they're all things that sort of happened in the right way at the right time. And, but I'd hate to say, there was some plan, because there wasn't a plan. There never was a plan.